Okay, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us for another Choosing Freedom webinar. Choosing Freedom is a Perth-based action-orientated group here, so great to see a lot of you tuning in on Zoom, and we're putting this out live on Facebook as well for others to see. We do appreciate everyone taking the time to come in. We're talking with Nick Patterson tonight. Just to let everyone know that this video is for educational and entertainment purposes only, and should not be used as a substitute for professional medical advice. We're not here to provide legal or tax advice. We do not claim to be an expert in any particular field. One should always seek competent, effective assistance of counsel regarding all legal or tax-related issues. We just simply do research and share open source information for educational and informational purposes. All public or private exchanges between our members and our staff are personal in nature and provided under the right to free speech. We have never intentionally committed an unlawful act. Just getting that out the way. Nick, how are you, mate? Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me, mate. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so I know a lot of people are really excited to hear from you because of the your experiences lately over in Melbourne at your MMA gym. They've raised a lot of interesting questions. So for anyone that hasn't watched the videos, would you like to maybe just give us a brief run through what you've kind of been going through over there in Melbourne during these lockdown periods?
So Melbourne has the most strict regulations during this lockdown. My group of friends, myself, we don't believe that there is a disease that's killing huge numbers of people and that there's any risk, and none of it makes sense. So we decided we're going to just keep opening our gym. So we opened our gym up as per usual. I've lost about 90% of my business, but I wasn't going to just close and relinquish my rights. So I stayed open. And then it was a few weeks ago, 2 police officers turned up to my property while I was teaching a class. They bashed on the door and yelled out. Everybody in the gym, bar one, ran up the back door and jumped over the fence. I went out the front with a friend of mine, and we just had a discussion with the police, which they conceded that they don't have authority or jurisdiction, and they left. No fines, no arrests, nothing. Then they came back to the next day. We did a protest at the gym, peaceful protest, and we had a friend that works for a senator in exile with us. He did a video so that we streamed it live on Facebook, where my friend actually went through what your rights are, how they operate, how they trump the directives from the UN. Then the next day, I was running just a small boot camp class with 5 people. That was it. And there was 22 police officers out front with a member of the DHHS, and he was directing the police to arrest me. And I was out the front with them on the other side of the fence, and the gate was locked, and there was 2 other members of my gym on the other side of the fence, and one was filming. And they tried to gain jurisdiction, establish jurisdiction over me in our discussion, and they weren't able to. I used some commercial principles, and if you want to learn how to deal with these people, I think the best thing is to learn. The easiest way is to learn equity maxims and commercial maxims, because equity trumps everything else, and commercial maxims, well, they're operating in commerce. So they're making offers and they're making claims. So when they make a claim and they say that you're in breach of whatever regulation, you have to rebut that claim. You just say, well, where's the evidence that regulation is not in direct conflict with the law? Are you saying it's not in conflict with the law? So it was that kind of a discussion back and forth, and to which they ended up leaving. Now, there's a maxim of law, I think it's commercial law, that he who leaves the battlefield first loses by default. So on those 2 occasions they left, and then they came a 3rd time, and they only stayed out the front. They wouldn't come in, but they stayed out the front. It was only 2 police officers. That's my middle son. And they only stayed for about a minute, and then they left, and that was it. So I haven't heard from them since. They have harassed me a little bit in you know, they've followed me to the shopping centre car park and pulled me over. I've had the council ring me. I've had my gym 10 years. There's never been an issue. Then all of a sudden there's an issue with the council. So you know, my friend said I'm getting I'm getting the waffle with the lot. So I'm probably going to cop it now because I've done something that's actually made them look stupid. And it wasn't my intention to make them look silly. But they turned up to my place and they picked a fight with me. I didn't pick a fight with them. They could have just left me alone, but they didn't. They wanted to assert themselves. Now, the other point is, I have a family of 6 of us in the family. I've got 4 kids. If I don't have any money, I don't have lots of money in the bank. Or I can just say, oh, I'll just take this time off. I didn't have the capacity to do that, and I did apply for settling because, you know, I had no choice because my business had been destroyed by the government. I had applied, and it took about 6 weeks for me to get any money. I couldn't survive for 6 weeks without any money. I couldn't feed my family. So that was the situation I was in, and that was about a month. It was about a month in. So I'd applied about a month ago, and about a month in, and I still hadn't received any money. I'm still operating my business and earning a little bit, about 10% of what I used to earn, and the police are trying to shut me down. So if you understand equity is just basically being fair. And I'd ask the question to anyone: do you think it's fair that a man should have to starve because of a directive from the UN that's not elected? I don't think it's fair and equitable because our family we would have had to beg people for money, to lend money, because we didn't have any money. Since then, I have got some money from the settling, but it was minimal, and you know, it took about 6 weeks. So that was the situation that I was in, and that's and I decided anyway that I was going to stay open. So yeah, I think that's. I think when you ask me the questions you want to ask me, and I'm happy to go through.
Yeah, so that's a pretty basic overview there. So you are, you know, during a time of, you know, these apparent COVID lockdowns, you did have people that numbered more than these kind of arbitrary numbers that they've thrown out there, and police have come to your private property saying that they're going to come inside and issue fines to everyone there. And to most people, we would think that is the be all end all. There is no argument to be had that the police have those powers and they're there to do it. But what case that you were able to put forth and the discussions and the back and forth you had with them actually left the police, and in the second video that we're about to watch a snippet of, the government agent, you left them with no choice but to actually essentially retreat. And that's happened over, you know, that's 3 times now where they've came and said that we have the right to do this, but then when it boiled down to it, because of your knowledge and the way you expressed it, they couldn't actually do what they said they can do, which raises the question: what else are they doing that they can't actually be doing? And, you know, what we're about to discuss tonight, how can that be applied to other areas of you know, infringements upon our rights, which are happening left, right, and centre? You know, vaccine mandates, different things. How could that possibly be applied to different situations so that we can stand within our power? What we might do is just show everyone. I'm going to share screen here and bring up. It's about 3 minutes of the second encounter that Nick had with police. So the first time that they came to his house, they came with, there were 2 policemen called there, and they ended up leaving. And this time, this is a video. We're going from 4 minutes in, and this is where they actually came back. There were about nearly 20 police.
There was 22 police, and they had blocked off all 3 streets as well into to where my gym is. So if you look to the right, to the left, and straight ahead, almost straight ahead, just to the right slightly, and blocked all of those off. So the police there as well.
Wow, that's quite the effort, isn't it? Quite a big operation on their behalf to come and have a chat.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah. So anyway, guys, let's watch this and just try and really take in what's happening here, and then we'll break it down afterwards with Nick.
But in not consenting, you're actually obstructing me as an authorised officer. Yeah. Which means the
No, I'm just standing. I'm just holding my position that you're breaking the law.
To come down
and these officers who don't actually know these things, because people that are above them don't teach them what the law actually says. They should be helping us from people like you that are stealing our rights using jurisdiction that's not even a relevant jurisdiction here. The UN. Can't trump our rights. We have rights.
Yeah, that's your opinion.
Okay, we have human rights. Are you saying we don't have human rights?
No, I'm not saying that. But
right you are, because your actions say that we.
At the moment, what I'm saying is that the state of emergency means that I can enter the property and the police can issue infringements to anyone we believe.
Well, I can say this, that I wrote something on a piece of paper that says you can't. Okay, yeah, right. And there's also law that says you can't. There's also case law precedents that say you can't. There's also a constitution that says you can't. Okay? But you're disregarding all of those. You're disregarding the Constitution, is that right? And you're disregarding the Constitution.
On the state of emergency of Victoria that's been declared.
Let me just get this right. Are you? I'm happy for you to enter the premises. If you can tell me and give me full disclosure that you have the jurisdiction to override our rights contained in our Constitution, and that you have power outside of the parameters that are disclosed in our Constitution. If you can accept liability for that, for any breach of that, then go in there.
I'm telling you that
you don't have Ken's phone number. Ken.
Which means that an authorised
Tell Ken. Call it back. Call Ryan.
Property. Let me finish.
Because Ryan loves the cream.
For the purposes of upholding the directions that have been issued for COVID-19. If you don't choose not to do that, like I said, the result of that will be a potential PIN notice on you. And if there is a class operating there, anyone in there will be issued with infringement notices of $1,600.
But they're not legitimate, so we're not really worried about that.
That goes to court.
And it's all fear tactics. All you do is you just cause fear in people. That's all you do. That is absolutely is what you're doing. It's fear. You're terrorizing people.
What we're trying to do is save lives.
Are you saying that your powers override our human rights?
What I'm saying is where I get.
Can
my
you just
powers
answer
from.
just a yes or no?
I'm telling you where I get my powers from.
Do they override our human rights? Does the state of emergency override our human rights? Please confirm.
That at the moment, the Victorian government has issued a state of emergency, which gives.
So you won't answer me, will you?
Property.
You will not answer the question.
I'm telling
does
you where
it override our human rights?
Doesn't matter at the moment.
It does matter. I've asked you a direct. And that's the issue. Like I asked the police before. They're public servants. I asked them a direct question. They won't answer the question.
So let me ask you a direct question. Are you going to answer the property?
I've asked you, and you won't answer me.
That's an esoteric question, which if you want to take that to court, that's completely
fine. It's not an esoteric question. It's a direct question. It's a direct question. Okay, it's very clear.
Okay, so I thought that would be just a nice snippet to share for anyone that hasn't watched it in its entirety. Please go and check it out. These are so that one was called MMA Fighter vs Victorian Police COVID Round 2. You can find these. There's also MMA Fighter vs Corona Cops. That was essentially, if we want to refer to it as Round 1. So they're the two videos there that I encourage everyone to go and watch, because it's very densely packed with certain concepts that I think, what tonight is all about. So there was the issue of jurisdiction, conditional acceptance, a number of other things that we'll probably look at organically. So maybe we'll start at the idea of jurisdiction and legal versus lawful, and what you were saying about directives coming from the UN and how they don't apply to us as persons.
Yeah, well, yeah, okay. So basically, it all goes back to man was given dominion. Dominion comes from man. If they make a law and that's man-made, you don't have to follow a man-made law unless you give your consent. That's why you have to sign your name for everything. Sign your name for a driver's license, become a driver. Now you're under the Road Safety Act or whatever act it is, that in your state. So what they do is they create controversies and tricks to make you acquiesce your rights. And most people don't know they have rights. They don't know where they come from, what the foundation is for rights. Okay? And the rights are basically your blessings from God that you're given on this earth, and it comes from natural law. So what they do is because these people don't care about humans, they don't care about they don't care about life. The UN's very anti-life, and they use trickery. So at the beginning of that second video, they were saying that a person must, and comply. And I said, well, I'm not a person, I'm a man. This is defined very differently. If you look in your legal dictionary, you'll see that person is a corporate entity, a trustee in bankruptcy, a trustee. It's not a man or a woman, doesn't have the same rights. And that's why we're given these titles: taxpayer, ratepayer, resident, person, natural person, still not a man or a woman. Even human isn't. And I mean, in your common English it is, but in legal English it's not. And that's the language that really matters to these people. So a treaty, if you look at like the Vienna Treaty, Magna Carta, there's certain rights that our leaders of our country, which represent us, we're meant to, are signatories between other nations. So when an internal rule from like this state is trying to trump a treaty that's at a much higher level, obviously it's clear which one's invalid. And that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to take away your human rights that we have at that treaty level, and at an international level, and even from a divine level from above. And they're trying to impose these directions, these ideas that are man-made, that they cannot confirm, that have any legitimacy. When you ask them, how is that legitimate? They can't provide any evidence. All they say is, well, we've been told by the government we can. And then the question is, well, which government is that? Is that the corporate government or the dual government? And where do they get the power from? Because the government gets the power from us. That's actually where they get it from. And it's not just like a token thing. They actually really do get their power from us, because we are the only ones that have dominion. That makes sense. And this whole world that we live on, whether you think it's a planet or a plane, the dominion comes from us. So we have to give it. And if we haven't given it, sometimes they create a controversy to get you to acquiesce. But if you understand that, you can win. Now sometimes these people, whether they're police or they're some sort of corporate agent, they don't follow the rules, and you might get arrested, but you will win it in the court, because as you go to the courts and you go to the higher courts, higher and higher, the people become more accountable and they're more aware of how things work. And you can see that in commerce, right? In commercial law, and this is all commercial law, because the police have an ABN. I know the Victoria Police do. The Department of Health and Human Services, they're another private company with private shareholders, privately owned, because all of our government entities were sold and privatised. So then private corporations came in, and then these private corporations have ABNs, so they're set up for business. They're there to make money. Hence why we're getting all these fines given to people. So that's the state that we're in. We've got these government agents that are actually corporate agents, and they don't know the rules either. And the people above them don't care if they break the rules, because they'll throw them under the bus as well. They don't care about us or them. They don't care about themselves. Does that explain? I hope that explains.
Yeah. And so I guess, can we hone in on this idea that governments are actually corporations, and all their departments are registered corporations, and they're attempting to contract with us as men and women. But my limited understanding is that they can't actually contract with man or woman. So on a commercial level. So it comes down to trying to trick us into acting as a person or a taxpayer or a resident.
Well, a corporation is a dead body speaking. That's what that means. Corpse and oration. So the corpse is the dead body. Oration, orate, it comes from the word like oral, which is your mouth, which is to speak. Latin, right? So you've got this corporation, and it's a corporate entity. What's an entity? It's a dead thing. It's a dead to spirit that's dead, right? An entity. And you know, they have all these weird words like summon, to summon. He's a summons. They can't summon a man or a woman. Police can't put a summons in the mail for a man or a woman. They can put a summons in the mail for a corporate entity. A dead body spoken entity. So it's like we're operating in necromancy. It's all necromancy. So this is how their system works, right? And what they do is they don't have power over us unless we give it. So they trick us into giving away our rights and becoming something that's lesser. Okay, so a person's less than a man, and a citizen's less than a man, a resident's less than a man. So when we say, like I was at the police station the other day because I was arrested at the protest. I got tricked. Basically, I got tricked helping a woman who we think was working for the police, and they were roughing her up, and we'll probably be taking the police to task over the way that they treated people at that protest. But I was arrested. But they tried to call me a person, and they asked me what my name was, and they tried to trick you into this. They said I was a resident. What's your residential address? Well, I'm not a resident. I'm a man. They said, what do you mean? I said, well, my spirit resides in my body, and I'm happy to provide an affidavit attesting to those facts. And I'm sure that you can't rebut those facts if I provide that affidavit. And then they just left it. I thought they'd give me more of a hard time, but they just left it. And it almost sounds ridiculous because of the way we've been programmed and conditioned, but it's not actually what, you know what the words mean. I can quote some of the definitions, but not all of them. I have quoted them to police before in the past, and they've said things like, oh, I don't care. So that happens as well. Okay, so just because you know the truth doesn't mean that you're going to get the best results. There's a couple of Bible verses that I use a lot in my process, which is don't cast your pearls before swine. So if you tell people some of these deeper meanings of things, if they're at the base level, they're not going to understand it. Right? So there's no point. And you agree with your adversary while you're in the way with him. So if you got the police there and they're give me your name, and you try to explain to them, look, I don't actually have to give you a name, but they're really. But sometimes it's just better just to do it and then take them to task after. You know, and there was that lady that was arrested, and they took the kid off her, and it was disgusting what they did in Sydney. She probably should have just given her name because it was being filmed, or given a name, and then sued them afterwards. Taken them and go straight to the county court, not to a magistrate's court, but to the county court. And if you don't get any love there, go higher.
Yeah.
And that's the way that we're going to have more of an impact.
Yeah. And I think we'll kind of come back to that example there where, someone was, doing the brave and, the right thing, trying to stand in that power, but ultimately, the police were just steamrolled her, and that footage of her and her 4-year-old child was just, watching that and then hearing about the baiting of you at the protest, and just to go off topic for a moment, but, for a while we spoke about my time in Palestine briefly before we started recording tonight. And, they used to say that the way of Palestine will be the way of the world if we don't change it. And what I'm seeing now in these lockdowns and the restrictions on travel and these, the military putting up checkpoints, I can't go down south to see friends, all these restrictions you can't meet. And then they're pulling, young children away from their mothers And then the old agent provocateur, I can't remember the Arabic word for that, but they literally have a word for that, because over there the Israeli Defense Force would plant one of their own over there and use that to escalate the situation and justify the aggression that's coming from whatever occupying force there is. And so
I've got a friend that works, he used to work for the same unit that arrested me. And he's not a police officer anymore. He's awake. He left. He was sick of it, but he worked for that exact same unit in the police force that break up the protests. And he told me, he said, "Yeah, this is what they do."
Yeah.
So you know, I understand. I got tricked, you know, and they appeal. These people are they're evil. And I mean, I don't mean all the police that are there. Some of them are completely ignorant, right? So they're not as accountable, but some of them are, and they know. And there was people at that protest, you know, calling out for the arrest of not just Bill Gates, but also the Premier, who and they're saying we've got evidence. We're going to share this evidence with everybody. You can imagine the Premier who works for the Victorian government company, which is written in all capital letters, as opposed to Victoria written in capital title case. He'd be on the phone to them saying, "Deal with this now. End this protest now." And they were just arresting people for nothing, just grabbing them using force and dragging them off. People that were speaking. Yeah. Mm. So we're in an interesting time, and I think we still haven't woken enough people up, but there is a movement, and there are people that are waking up to it. And I'm sure that they've learned how to do this from communism and, you know, in the past, Nazism and whatever else there is. They've worked out exactly how to do it. Most effective.
Yeah. So that'll be attempted to be implemented for us in the more advanced nations that are now diving deeper into tyranny. But that's why this information, like we're covering tonight, I think is so important. So yeah, I guess we're looking at the idea that there's these corporations masquerading as, you know, these things called government, which are actually not genuine government. They're not, you know, you often made reference, you know, asking where they were getting their power from. Are they getting their power from the Crown? I think you stated that when he said who he was and where he was from, the DHHS, that you said, well, that's actually, you know, under directives from the UN, which is in conflict with the Crown. That right there, I think, is important for people to really understand. Do you want to elaborate on that, please, Nick?
Well, that's more for the police, because the police make an oath to the Crown. So they're an oath to uphold you know, basically they work for the Crown. So if you make an oath to the Crown, and then you've got another man there who claims to be from government, which is a private company as well, who hasn't made an oath to the Crown, he's telling the police to arrest me because I'm failing to follow the directives that come from the UN, because the directives come from the UN, and then they direct all the state governments all around the world implement their plan from the World Health Organization, right? That's how it works. So they're telling state governments, and the state governments, and that's why it's different. Wherever you go, it's slightly different, because they're implementing things in a different way, slightly. And I was basically trying to tell the police that, you know, you've made an oath to the Crown. You know, you've got to uphold that. You know? He's giving you directives, but those directives are in conflict, and you can't have competing legislation. And this isn't even legislation. This is just directives. They don't have any line of authority back to our constitution at all. So it's from a different power. So they're enforcing the rules from a foreign power, which is in breach of their oath. But they don't even know that. They take these oaths, and they don't even know what the oaths are. Maybe some of them do, and that's why some people leave. You know, you see in America, there's places that are leaving. They're like, I'm doing this anymore. It's against my oath. It's against the Constitution. You know, I think, you know, hooray! You know, some people are seeing it and they're waking up. But you know, we didn't get any love from the police when they had the 22 police out the front of my gym. There was no love there. But hopefully, I planted some seeds there, because I wasn't abusing them. Abusive. I was trying to reach them, because they are men and women. They've been turned into officers. They've been brainwashed, and they don't really know what's right and wrong. I mean, a prime example of as proof or evidence is the way that police will, when they detain someone and they question them, they will lie to them. to try and obtain information. Now, I don't believe lying is the right thing to do ever, unless you're lying to save someone's life. You know, example is, say, you know, a government body comes in and says, you know, and there's someone innocent you're hiding in your house. Say it's Jews and the Nazis, and you say to them that, and you lie to them. You say, look, there's no Jews here. That might not have even happened anyway. We don't know, but that would be a justifiable way to lie. Police do it all the time. They'll say, oh, you know, we've got evidence that you've done this or you've done that, or that your friends told us this, and they just lie. That's how they operate. So if you just look at their operating system, it's not righteous or good. But they're still people, and we can always try to reach them and get them to come out, because everyone we get from there or from any government body is one that comes over to our side. You know what I mean? So that's they lose when we gain one. It's like two people. You know, they're down one, we're up one. So yeah, it's a numbers game.
At the end of the day, we are absolutely on the same team, because, you know, if anyone wanted to draw a line between them and us, the us is the everyday person, and the them are the ones that we don't actually know their names, and the ones that are giving these directives and pulling the strings of these different corporations masquerading as government. So yeah, there's a lot of good police, and I've known, you know, different people in the force, and they are, you know, really nice, kind, moral people. That said, you know, if you are going to put that morality aside in a moment and initiate force on an innocent person that hasn't aggressed upon anyone, then it almost doesn't matter what type of family man you are, because the bottom line is that you're initiating force against your fellow man, and we're all in this together. But the way that you were able to communicate in that video, and I hope people will watch the whole thing, I think you did a great job of planting seeds, and it really reminded me of the kind of nonviolent communication. Marshall Rosenberg, very kind of compassionate and just delivering information without trying to judge or blame, but doing it compassionately. So I think that's a great example of what we need to do. So can we break down? So we've got directives, we've got legislation, we've got acts, and we've got laws. How do these different words, like, what are they, and how do they relate to, you know, us as men and women, or us as merchants or persons?
Oh, and acts and statutes are man-made law that we have to consent to. There's case law for that as well. Whereas law, okay, natural law comes from the Creator. Thou shalt not kill, shalt not bear false witness. But there's times which there's some are higher than others. So you can break one. Sometimes it's the only way to uphold a higher one. You know, so there's certain things that the law, you know, that's why an actual crime has to have an injured party. You have to have stolen or hurt someone or done something that's causing them to be at a loss. What we have now is it's all these road. They're not like the road rules. That's why they're called rules. They're not laws. They're rules. They don't even name them. They can't even call them laws because they're not. You know, they're the road rules, and they're the rules of a private company that you've agreed to be a member of, and you've applied for your driver's license. That's what they've done. You know, they've created this system, but we've been coerced into it. So coercion is against them. Coerce someone, and they've coerced us because if we travel, because the word drive is commercial in its nature. If we travel and the police pull us over because they're indoctrinated and they don't have the capacity to, you know, or they don't have the capacity to freely think, which is why they often will give you a really hard time and treat you as though you're a criminal, even though you're actually not. Even if you show them what the definitions of the words mean and what law is, they're not interested. And that would be why they do in-depth psychological evaluations on recruits to the police force before they let them in, because it's a way of sifting out I don't know if anyone's heard of the Milgram experiment. They made a movie on it called the Experiment, where basically they would they'd have an actor there, and they have these actors. The other person doesn't know they're an actor, and someone who's an authority telling them to press this button that would cause an electric shock to this man on the other side of the glass. And they'll ask him a question, and if he answered the question that would lie, the man that was dressed up like a doctor in authority would turn the voltage up and say, press the button. And until the actor on the other side would die, but not really die, it was an act. And they found that over 50% of the people would do it all the way up to someone dying because someone in authority told them to do so. And the other percentage would stop at some point and would say, hey, I can't do this. You're hurting this guy. And they wouldn't do it. So there's mechanisms that they understand to use on our mind, because that's what the battlefield is. That's why we have the TV, which is basically an MKUltra mind control device that's in everyone's house, and they're bombarding our minds with fear and different ways of thinking. They're programming us. That's what the program is, and that's the problem. With the police, they do coerce. We are coerced, even though the truth is, I have every right to travel. If I do it in a motor vehicle, I'm going to be arrested, and I'm going to be taken to task and detained, and I would have to be willing to go through all of that and go to the High Court to have a win against the police. And most people don't have the capacity to do that because we just don't have the money and or the knowledge.
Well, it does seem like a certain level of knowledge might be able to get us through, certain situations. I think you've proved that there, Nick. So we're looking at this corporation, the masqueraders government, and they're coming in saying that they have the right to do certain things, come into your private property, do all of that. You're saying, well, that's actually just a directive. That's not actually law. And you're getting your directives from the UN, which is an unelected body that has seemingly no oversight and no real connection to us here in Australia. So why are they telling us what to do? What would be an example of, if they were acting within the law, what process would that act or directive have to have gone through to be legitimate? Because you're calling them out saying, well, if you can show me evidence that it's legitimate, then please, by all means, do what you got to do. And they weren't able to show that they were legitimate, which should raise a lot of questions in the public's mind. So what would be an example of legitimate?
Well, okay, so laws need to receive royal assent. The royal assent, none of the statutes, acts receive royal assent anymore from the de jure Queen. They receive it from the Queen of Australia, which is an entity that was created in 1973. And in 1973, there's an act called the Statute Law Revision Act, where they actually remove the words Commonwealth from all of the other acts. So they dissolve the Commonwealth without having any authority or power, without asking us, the people, they could do so. So they've never received the power to do it, but they did it. Okay, so these people are criminals. Like it's high treason. So that happened. So that's one thing I always ask.
Since 1973.
Yes.
Yeah, has not received royal assent and is therefore not legitimate.
It's not legitimate, no.
Yeah.
So I mean, and if that's not crazy enough, then you've got these directives that you can't have legislation that contradicts and it both be valid, right? And even in our constitution, it says I think it's section 109, if the law of a state is inconsistent with the law of the Commonwealth, basically the federal law will prevail over the states, right? If they're inconsistent, right? So the higher one prevails over the lower one. And likewise with treaties and human rights, they go right up to the very, 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 very top, right? So how can some little internal rule, some guy down the bottom, it's like some police officer that's just started telling the the commands, you know, right up the top, the command, or the chief commissioner, and saying, no, we're doing this now. And the chief commissioner, what's the chief commissioner going to say? No way, you know, unless they've got some way of, you know, convincing them. But so that's basically what's happened. And because they've made us so ignorant of law, they removed it from our schools. I didn't learn it at school. I had to learn it, you know, I had to go to start joining different groups to learn this stuff, and I started reading a lot. And what helped is that I know the Bible quite well. Because I knew the Bible quite well, I've always read that, I understand what law is, because it's all in there. All the commercial maxims of law that's taught in there, all the equity maxims of law, they're taught in that book. And basically what the other side do, they know that, so they use trickery to get around those rules, so that they're still ticking the box, but on a technicality. It's like the small print. Oh, you signed it. Not my fault. You didn't read it all. You know, and I mean, they've given us an education where we learn what words mean, but they're not the correct definitions. If you go to the if you look at the legal dictionary, how come all the words have different meanings? That's the trap, isn't it? They've trapped us. You don't understand what the symbols mean. I mean, if you go to the County Court of Victoria in Melbourne, as you walk in the front door, there's a great big image on the front. It's like, I don't know, maybe 1.5 stories high above this big door as you walk in. And it's Lady Justice with a blindfold on, and the scales are tilted, and her sword's lowered. So she's not defending justice. She's blindfolded, so it's blind justice, and the scales tilted, just means there's no equity, right? Now, if you look at, like, say, like the Lady Justice statue in Frankfurt, they're even, it's not blindfolded, and her sword is raised, right? So they're telling you with a symbol as you walk into that court what they are, right? But you know, I've been in there many times, and I've never knew until recently. A friend of mine, Darren, actually explained that to me, and he said, "Oh, that's," and he explained, because he's got a lot more knowledge than I do. And he told me, and I thought that is just amazing. And all of us that go into the county court see it. So you've been noticed as you walk in. You've seen it because it's right there. So I don't know where we were. I've gone off on a tangent. Sorry.
No, that's very interesting stuff. And when you break it down, it just becomes so obvious. But they do place such truth in plain sight for us.
Then they're not accountable because they've given full disclosure. They've given disclosure, so you have the liability. So that's one of the things. So there's certain things in commercial law is liability, disclosure, and consent. Right, so they have to give full disclosure. That's why you get full disclosure in all of these, all of these. And actually, it's not just in movies and things where they tell you what the plan is, but it's also in every operating system for how these people operate to control us. It's all available. If you look online, you can find all this information. But you've got to read through pages and pages and pages of legislation, and it's. Most people aren't going to do that. They don't have the time. So they can say, oh, look, we've given full disclosure, but it's not equitable disclosure. You know, whereas if I was to give someone full disclosure, I'd be saying, hey, just so you know, you need to tell me that you understand this. And I would make sure they understand before. They don't do that. They just put it somewhere, it's all available, and then they go to work and extract everything they can from us, take away our birthright, which is when they steal our stuff, with rates and taxes and all these other things that they create that are based on a statute, they're taking our rights, because our property is actually a human right.
Yeah. And can we go back and just discuss, so 1973, they passed legislation in an attempt to dissolve the Commonwealth, and from that point onwards, was that the beginning of the Australian government, all capitals corporation? And then the creation...
I don't know if it was. That's the beginning. I just know that at that, my friend Darren, you should get him on here. He'll be able to explain this in so much detail, because he's involved in a High Court case against the Australian government in the UK at the moment. It's actually in the process now. And it's specifically regarding that.
Yeah, maybe we can. You mentioned the Queen, and there's the Queen de jour, And
Yep.
then there's the Australian Queen. What can you explain?
They
any
just
more?
created another queen because they were limited in their powers and they didn't like the limit in their powers. So what they did is they created some other entity so that they could assent to these laws or statutes, these acts, without invoking the Queen's authority. They just got their own queen they created.
And so that Australian Queen is the one signing off on this legislation in an attempt.
Yeah.
But is that an actual person? Is there a woman? Or
I
is
don't
that
think so. It's just an office
just
they
an
created. It's a corporation. Yeah.
Yeah.
And on top of that, here's some more. And this is a lot of this is from my mate Darren. He's the brains behind all of this sort of research. But, the federal government doesn't have power to create corporations, right? They don't have any power to incorporate, and they're creating all these corporations that they don't really have power to create. You know, the Queen of Australia is a corporation soul, right? So they've created this entity that they specifically don't have the power to do in our constitution. So they've just overridden it, and they've just done it and hope that we're all ignorant. And then they've pushed for they've pushed really hard to become a republic. Then they're safe now. But because they can go to prison for a long time for doing this stuff. You know, there's a number of people that have been they're respondents to this case in the UK, and you know, we're talking, you know, this is major crime at the highest level of our government, and probably even higher than that. Yeah, so basically, that's what I always use if I with tolls or anything like that. Like, I mean, tolls on your road. I don't know. Do you have any toll roads over there?
No, not here in Perth.
Yeah, so we've got plenty of them over here in Melbourne now, and I can't remember what section of the Constitution is, but you can't. Commonwealth nation, you're not meant to be able to charge people to travel on roads, but they do it in a way. They get the way they do it is they create legislation that isn't valid, that's inconsistent, and it received royal assent from the other queen, and because we're all ignorant, and then we've just lost one of our rights. Now we've got to pay to travel because we're ignorant.
Yeah, so much of it just relies on our ignorance, doesn't it?
But there's a Bible verse, a very famous one from Hosea: "My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge."
Yeah, apparently, yep, it's a very interesting book, and we all have a lot of judgments about it, and yet very few of us have actually read it. So it's something that I'm currently making my way through now, just so I can form my own opinions, and I encourage everyone else to as well. So yeah, we'll just come back, because I guess I like to come back to the core kind of concepts that you were relaying throughout your the video there, and your interactions there. So you're continually asking, you know, the government agent, do your powers trump my human rights? So that seems to be at the core of a question that we should continually ask, is that I, as a man or woman, have inherent human rights, treaties, declarations that state that I have certain rights, and you're coming in here and saying, because of COVID, regardless of what you think about COVID, and we've done many webinars with people that have poked many holes in the whole theory and scientifically, but you know, even if it were legitimate in the way that they've gone about it, they've brought in this Biosecurity Act and this legislation and said, we now have these powers and we're going to do this. And you're standing there saying, okay, so you're saying that I now have no human rights. And he was unable to answer that. He couldn't give you a straight answer, could he?
No, he just started saying, no, I have the government has, and he won't answer it. So you ask them 3 times. That's a maxim that's actually taught in scripture as well. That's why the commercial companies always send you 3 demand letters. And if you don't answer or respond, you're giving consent. So I would ask him, where's the evidence? You ask them questions too. The reason you want to ask questions, you basically establish your claim in the form of a question and you throw it back at them. are you saying that your directives trump our human rights? Now, if they say yes, they're lying, and that would be dishonourable, and they could be taken in custody. If they say, if they don't answer, they're saying basically they're agreeing with you. But if they say no, I'm not saying that, that's your second witness principle. So in the Bible, it talks about the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, every word's put established. So if you have 2 witnesses confirm something, that can establish truth. So if you ask them a question that would establish your claim and they answer the question, then you can say, so that we're in agreement. And you and the other person who you ask have both confirmed. You've got 2 witnesses now. So say, if I said, are you saying that my human rights are no longer valid because of some COVID regulations from the UN? If you said, no, I'm not saying that, I would say, we're in agreement then that I do still have some. So we've just had 2 witnesses, him and myself. Okay, and that's established. It's very powerful, and it's at a spiritual level. It's powerful.
Yeah, that's a really that's another key concept right there that you've touched on.
Mark Patelic taught me that one.
From Solutions Empowerment?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and you were saying, in other conversations that, to always put the question back onto them, and just without going onto the layer that you've just spoken about, it does seem like it almost puts them on the back foot somewhat. So rather than you just stating, something like, I have human rights, you're actually engaging and baiting them in and trying to establish truth, yes, on a deeper level, but it also, the dynamic of the conversation, I just noticed, it seems to give a lot more power from just a superficial perspective, looking in and seeing him like scuttling around this question that should be a pretty straightforward, well, yes, it does, if that were actually true.
Yeah. And that's the thing. If he had the power, he would have been arrested. I wasn't arrested, and it's because he needed consent. Right? It's one of the commercial principles in this world, is you need consent, because we are the ones that were given dominion. And he would know that. I reckon he's probably a very knowledgeable bloke. Probably a Freemason. And I only say that because he was dressed up and he'd come from the Brighton Golf Club in his nice suit and clothing. He wasn't wearing a uniform, and he used the word esoteric. And he said that was an esoteric question. I said, that's not esoteric. It's a direct question. That esoteric, we only know the meaning of that word. If you were a Freemason, you studied Freemason, because it's an esoteric order. So it was just very, very odd that he used that word. But these people they're aware of how things operate, because they're the ones that are using their form of witchcraft to dominate us and control us. We're all in slavery. That's why I say the truth sets you free. If you don't have the truth, how can you be free? Because you've got these pirates everywhere, and they're liars. They deceive. And if you don't know that they're deceiving you, and you can't call them on it, and you can't invoke their witness against themselves, because they can bear witness against themselves by you asking them questions. And if they can't answer the question, because if you ask them a question, or you answer their question with a question, are you saying that the Constitution is no longer valid? They say, they will either lie, which incriminates them, or tell the truth, which proves that they don't have any jurisdiction, or they'll be silent, which also is their assent that they don't, that the Constitution is still valid, right? Because silence is consent, and that's out of the Bible as well. Numbers chapter 30 teaches us that. And I tell you, I didn't know. I read the Bible for years. I didn't know any of this stuff until I started to learn about law, and then I started to realise how much of the Bible I had no idea about going to church, because church didn't teach me any of these solutions. But it's just that I knew how to navigate through the Bible, and I knew a lot of these verses. I just didn't really know what they meant and what the deeper meanings were until I started to learn law and started to apply it on that level. And then you start to see that, oh wow, this is actually is very, very powerful in the here and now, in this commercial world that we live in, because they have to operate according to commercial rules. And as you go higher up, with the people that have more knowledge, they're more accountable, and they do abide in those commercial principles. Whereas obviously the police at the lower level don't. And I think that's what a friend of mine who used to be a copper, he actually told me that the checkerboard symbol they have, the white and blue that they have around their hats, on their clothing, that represents the police being at the base level. It's like the Freemasonry, the checkerboard, chessboard floor in every lodge. That's the base level. So if you're a police officer, you're at the base level, not given the knowledge at the higher level.
Yeah, you can see in their imagery that it's the checkerboard flooring for the two ladders to, the 33 rungs of the ladder, and the checkerboard is at the very bottom. And
there's hexagon hats that they represent Saturn worship, putting you in a box, giving you down. You've got the upside down pentagram. That's the biggest giveaway there. With the laurel wreaths, it's on the UN's logo as well. That same on there. That's the Victoria Police. I don't know what they're on the other states. I know some of the states have a pentagram upside down as well.
We do have, or they do have the upside down pentagram here in WA as well. And I just really hope that these people, a lot of them really good, kind-hearted, and still able to exercise conscience, can break free of what's going on there, because I think it's in their best interest as well, because like I said, we're all in this together.
That's because you're compassionate and you care about people, and that's what we're meant to do. We're meant to be compassionate and actually care about people.
And most are for sure. It's just in a pyramidical, top-down kind of structuring of the planet, you only need the kind of psychopathic 1%. I think it's maybe 2 to 4% of the population are born psychopathic. They don't have compassion. They don't have those emotional security nets to stop them from doing out of control things. And they crawl to these positions of powers, and they generate these strange layers of trickery that make us think that, what should be an elective or representative government is actually, a corporation trying to reel us in through different contracts, and that every conversation we're having is based on, Black's Law Dictionary that shows that the language being used has a total different meaning to what the average person thinks it means. And so therefore they gain our consent through that, which brings me to the next question, is that there were kind of 2 points there, 2 ways that you're responding throughout your videos. One is making very clear that I do not consent for you to come onto my property, and which is pretty straightforward. And then the other one was conditional acceptance. So where you were saying things like, look, I'm happy to accept your offer so long as you can show me ABC. Do you want to discuss those 2 different approaches to?
Yep. I do not consent. I do not consent. I do not consent. Just to establish, my claim, because truth is expressed in the form of an affidavit. I said it 3 times. I said it more than 3 times, but I said it 3 times, and I said it another 2 times later.
And so what's the significance of the 3 again?
There's just power in 3s. They all throughout the scripture, they use the number 3. There'll be 3 claims. Lucifer makes Satan makes a claim against God, and Job's the affidavit. And there's 3 different times. Job, Satan says, he only blesses you, God, because you give him all of this stuff. And then he takes all the stuff away, and he still blesses God. Then he does another one, makes another claim. It's because he's got his health. It takes his health away. Still blesses God. And then he says it's because he's got friends. He takes his friends away, and then he still blesses God, right? Jesus is in the wilderness for 40 days fasting at the very end of his 40 days, and this shows you what kind of spirit this evil thing is. That at the weakest point, at the end of 40 days of fasting from food and water, he comes up and he tempts him 3 times. There's all these threes, right? In commerce, you get sent demand letters, you get sent 3. You know, demand notice, default demand notice, final default demand notice, and then after that, if you haven't rebutted their claim, then their claim is valid. You're in commercial default. So you've consented by your silence. I've made 3 claims that I don't consent, just so that they knew that I don't consent. I've told you 3 times. You know, you can't claim that you don't know. You need my consent. It was just setting the battlefield for the next part, which is, you need my consent, and I'm not going to give it to you because I've told you I do not consent. I do not consent. The conditional acceptance, well, basically what that is I'm not being belligerent. I'm accepting. I'm using the conditional acceptance as a way to expose their invalidity. So they're making a claim that they can come into my property without my consent. I've said to them, I accept. I'm happy for you to go in on the provision you can provide evidence that you do have power to go in. And then the man says, yes, well, I do have. No, you've got to provide the evidence, though. Where's the evidence that our constitution is no longer valid and that your directives trump our human rights? Where's the evidence of that? And I know they don't have the evidence of that. So I've stayed in honour, and I've said, look, I'm not being aggressive, like I'm going to slay, because we're going to go. I believe they're going to go in that direction and say, you're not letting me in, you're not letting the authorised officer in, arrest him and get the police to arrest me unlawfully. So I did the conditional sentence. I'm happy for you to go in if you can provide the evidence of these things. If you provide the evidence, then go in. But I don't believe you can because the evidence doesn't exist. And you know it doesn't exist. And that's why I was using the conditional sentence. It's a weapon. It's not, you can use it in different ways.
And I'm hearing a lot about conditional acceptance in the in power movement, which are really looking at it from the merchant law aspect, and in order to function as a merchant, which is our birth certificate, and that's what they're banking on interacting with as a corporate entity. They're trying to do business with you as a merchant, not as a man or woman, and in order to say no, in their language, it's actually yes with terms and conditions. And when someone's standing in falsehood like they are, you simply have to state the terms of showing the evidence, which we know they don't have because they're lying. And they can't do it, and it actually backfires on them, which is a really interesting process. So was that part of it as well, that honour, remaining in honour? Maybe just saying that one again for people.
Well, yeah, because you're operating in the governing system that they operate under, which is lex mercatoria or law merchant. I knew that because I've been taught that from Mark in more detail, and I knew that I can do that. Anytime you can do that. Yeah, I'm happy to accept that. Just provide the evidence that it doesn't cause harm, it doesn't do this, or that the law does actually say that. Now the police might say, "Oh, you're in breach of XYZ of the Crimes Act." Oh, okay. Can you please provide the evidence of that? And then they say, "Oh," they might show you, and then they might go, "Oh, it's not actually in that section." Oh, okay. So you were wrong then. Oh, okay. Well, then we're in agreement that I haven't broken that. So you have every right. I use one in the Crimes Act, Section 24F of the Crimes Act, allows you to, and this was Darren showed me this one as well. Section 24F allows you to question the validity of any government entity, corporation. It doesn't matter if it's councils, it doesn't matter if it's the Queen herself. You have every right to question their validity if you do it in good faith. So you might say, well, I think what you're doing is your actions are incorrect or invalid. Now, we have the right to do that. However, it doesn't mean that they're gonna follow it, because remember, we've got criminals in government. These people are criminals. I'll give you an example: the Australian Taxation Office, right? So I have battles with them all the time for other people. That's where most of my knowledge is. The ATO have a code of conduct. They have to give full and complete disclosure to people. They have to resolve their concerns, and they have to be transparent. So I ring them up for people as an authorised agent, because they can authorise anyone. Anyone can authorise somebody to read for them. I'll ring them up and I record the call. I ask them, I say, will you uphold your code of conduct? And they say, yes. Will you give complete disclosure? Yes. Will you resolve the concerns of the public? Yes. Will you be transparent? Yes. Okay. I've got some questions regarding your application of the Australian tax law. And they say, we're not going to answer it. That's unconscionable conduct. But they do it anyway. And then I say to them, well, Section 24 of the Crimes Act allows me to question your actions, policies of counsel. I have the right to do that. It's not against the law for me to do that. But you're not going to let me do that. You're going to continue to act against me. So it's no like, jail-free card if you know these things, it's always going to work for you. No, because the other side break it all the time. And then it requires us to be, to remain on the battlefield to the end, all the way as high as it needs to go because if we have the truth, we will win. We just might have to go through a number of layers. You might have to have a mediation, say it's the ATO, we'll use it as an example. Letters, demand letters, phone calls, mediation, maybe you get a third party to mediate, maybe you go to the court, you go to the higher court. You can do that. But if you know it's true, you have to have quality of character and integrity to follow it through all the way. Because if you stop at any point in the way and go, it's just getting too hard, I'm not going to do this anymore, you are then agreeing with them. You're agreeing because you're not giving your all. You're saying, you know what? You win. When you say you win, you're establishing their truth as being, as their claim as being truth, even though it's not. And because we are morally bankrupt now, I think as a society, we don't have the morals that we probably had once before, but I think a lot of people are turning back to morality now. So we're starting to get those morals back. If we're not willing to just go all the way, and you see a lot of these high court cases, it's just like it might be some old bloke or him and his wife, and they go and represent themselves. They've studied it and they've gone all the way to the end, and then they win. And it might have taken a few years, and then they get handsomely compensated for their efforts as well. We need more of those, because it's a real battle. We're not meant to be in our comfort zone all the time. So, I might be called to have to take, Victoria Police to court and go all the way up to the top. I've got to be willing to do it all the way up. If that's what I get drawn into, and that's the claims that are made, I need to be willing to do that. And that's going to weaken the enemy, because it is an enemy. And it's not the individuals or the people that are enemies. It's the power over their minds that's coming from a small group. And we were talking about that before.
Yeah, it does seem like, when you talk about that, seeing it through to the end, it's they do have a lot of resources on their end, and I guess they're paying a lot of people to stay on that night and day and not give up. So yeah, it does ask a lot of one's character. And I will put on that note, because we've had some questions here asking about what if we don't have money to go to court and these different things, and the knowledge. And
one thing I was going to say, just while you're on that tangent, there's a good example of Jesus in the temple casting out the money changers out of the temple, right? The temple is really a symbol of us. We're the temple, right? This is our mind is our temple. If we're willing to compromise what's true, what's equitable, what's fair, what's honest for money, we've got money changers in our temple, and then we need to get rid of them. We don't want to be those people. So our temple shouldn't have that in there. We shouldn't go, look, I'm going to compromise the truth because I'm getting paid $150,000 to do this easy job. That's not the way we're meant to be. We should be willing to go, you know what, I'll get rid of that job. I'll seek to change the rules from above. And if I get fired, well, then at least I did it for the right reason. because we don't have the morality, the majority of us don't have that morality, doesn't mean we can't. That doesn't happen. People go, oh, it's just my job. How many people would say that? Do the wrong thing, but it's just my job. One time, I was years ago, and this is before I knew any of this stuff, I was actually getting having a medical done to go work for this big company that I used to work for. I always talk to people, right? So I just started talking to the bloke next to me. Hey, how you going, mate? Yeah. I said, well, what are you doing here? He said, I'm getting a medical. Oh, so am I. Oh, what company are you working for? And he said, oh, I'm going to be a ticket inspector. I said, well, like a parking inspector? And he said, yeah. And I said, why would you do that? His reasoning was, well, somebody's got to do it. And my reasoning was, no, if nobody does it, it won't be done. That's how I thought of it, right? So a lot of people they're in that trap of, well, someone's going to do it. No, I might as well be me. I get paid for it. Rather than I know it's not right to be giving people tickets for things when and I don't believe that it's a good honourable thing to do. So I won't do that. I won't for money sell my my honour and my integrity. Do something for money.
And that kind of relationship there shows the microcosm and the macrocosm, how our external environment is a direct reflection of what's going on inside, because everything, all the chaos and the corruption and all of those things on the outside are a direct result of the decisions and the thought processes we're having on the inside. And
that's the battlefield is here, and we have dominion. So if we're losing the battle up here and the enemy's getting in, we have dominion over the world. We create the world, turn it into whatever's in here.
And it's almost as if that has been hijacked by the few with that trickery. Yeah. But the beauty is that we live in a time with a lot of transparency because of the internet and all the information circulating. So I think we are heading in the right direction. And what I wanted to just say on the back of your description of the journey that many of us need to be willing to take in order to stand in truth, which I totally agree with, is the Empower process, their notice of liability that works with merchant law. And it's actually a commercial document. You as a merchant, it's basically a counter offer to all these different corporations, whether it's the telcos or the pharmaceutical and the vaccine industry, or the different areas, the smart meters. It's actually a counter offer and a way of putting them into default by a similar thing, asking that we accept as long as you can show safety and efficacy to this level, or something which they can never prove, and then creating a debt instrument against that. So it's fascinating stuff. And what I wanted to say is that they've created that so carefully that it will keep those of us that do follow that process through out of the courts. Very careful clauses in there for those that are listening here and asking questions about. It's reading between the lines that there's a bit of nervousness about entering the courts. Something like the Empower process is designed to keep you as an individual out of the courts. So please go check that out. That's empowermovement.com. So yeah, I'm not sure if there's too much more to cover, Nick. I've got a few questions here if you've got time to answer them.
Yeah, sure. I'll do my best.
Yeah. Oh, I guess one big question is to do with the fact that we've got people saying on the front lines at these demonstrations, I do not consent. You mentioned Renee over in Sydney with a 4-year-old child. What happened there? We also have another lady, wonderful, brave lady here in WA. She was arrested in a recent exercising my rights little exercising session. And it does seem like it's not enough just to yell and say, I know I have human rights. I do not consent. I'm not giving you my name, because we saw what happened to them. So what where would you give, your opinion on maybe what could be improved there and what could make it more?
She needs, okay, it's like you did jiu-jitsu, right? I run an MMA gym, so I did lots of jiu-jitsu, right? You've got a couple of moves. but you don't know how to get the person to the ground to use them. Okay, you've got to need a bit more of a game. What she was doing was right, absolutely right. She had the right to do that. But what they did is they create a controversy. So you need to be able to, if they say, "Oh, look, what's your name?" You have to state your name. Where's the evidence that I have to state my name? Can you please provide that evidence. I'm happy to accept. I'll give you my name when you provide the evidence that I have to give my name. Now, if they refuse to provide the evidence, they're in default now. Okay, and it's things like that that you need to use on them. You know, so you do that's conditional acceptance. You know, are you saying that it's against the law for me to be doing what I'm doing? And if they say yes, I go, what law is it? Which law have I broken? They'll say the public, wherever act it is. And then you've got heaps of different things you can do. You can say, well, I believe that act's we should be learning this before we go out to do something. To say we kind of know that how they're going to respond to us. So if we just know that this particular act is inconsistent with the higher laws, then we just say, my understanding is it's inconsistent with the higher laws, or it's in contradiction to the higher laws. If you can state which laws they are or which treaties they are, what it does is it takes the confidence away from the ones that are attacking you. A bit like if you're boxing and someone, they come, you think they're bigger than you, and then they throw a couple of punches and you duck and weave out the way and you hit them, bang, and they're like, whoa, all of a sudden their confidence has just gone down because you've thrown something back at them and they aren't able to defend themselves. So you just ask them, you say, look, where's the evidence that this act is actually supersedes our human rights and the Vienna Treaty? Where's the evidence of that? I don't believe there is any. But if you can provide that, I'm happy to give you my name. Otherwise, have a nice day. And
Because
I don't think she knew how to do that. Maybe, but what she said was right, and what the police did to her was wrong. And she's a very brave woman, and I think if we had and that's morality. That's the morality I'm talking about. The morality that she had to be able to do that. Now, if you give her a bit more knowledge of a few things, with that staunch toughness, I'm not going to back down. She's going to be a weapon against the enemy. That's what we need. You can't just be big and strong but not know how to use it. You can't just have this amazing knowledge but not have any capacity to use it. You need to be strong enough, mentally to do it. Be like going into a fight. And I always apply everything I do. I think of in fighting terms because I train fighters. That's what I've done for years and years, and I was a professional fighter. So that's what I do. But if if you trained really and you had all these skills but you weren't fit, you wouldn't go and fight. So you might have all this knowledge, but you might not have the capacity to fight because you're physically not fit. If you're physically fit, you don't have any skills. You might do well for a bit, but eventually you're going to lose because you don't have the skills. So you've got to have both. And I think a lot of people that are waking up are learning them, but they haven't learned them to such a degree that they're able to win against the enemy. Because a lot of these police are good at it, at what they do. They're good at extorting people and convincing people and creating controversies. They're like, on a lesser degree, like lawyers. Lawyers at a higher degree, because that's what they do. They just create controversies. Their whole game is controversial. We just need to know how to invalidate their claims, which is commercial maxims. Truth is expressed in the form of an affidavit. So truth is expressed through your declaration, your claim. An unrebutted affidavit or an unrebutted claim stands as truth in commerce. The operating commerce, so they're making a claim against you. If you don't rebut the claim, you're agreeing to it. You have to rebut it. And then if people know to immediately rebut any claims that the police make and to use conditional acceptance to get them to agree with you. So, for instance, you need to give me a name because you're in breach of XYZ law. Okay. Well, my understanding is it's a directive and that it comes from the UN and it's in contradiction to these laws. Can you provide evidence that it's not in contradiction to these laws? Are you saying, you should ask them questions, and what will happen is they'll try to make the fight go longer and longer that the better you are, the shorter it will be. And if you show you're not aggressive and you don't just make claims, but you basically establish your claims in the form of a question, you're actually getting them to acknowledge your claim, because you want to invalidate their claim with your claim, right? So your claim is a question that you ask them, and when they answer it or don't answer it, they've then confirmed. Oh, so you don't have evidence of that? Okay, well then we're in agreement then. Or, oh, so I do have human rights, and they do trump that. Okay, well then we're in agreement. And does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It's you know, we've been sharing a little bit of information around this. We had Mike from Know Your Rights come on, and I wish I could remember.
He's really good, Mike, isn't he?
Yeah, he's great, and he really referenced something specific that said, what was it, that you know, you must show evidence for authority. You can't just say I have the authority, and somewhere in the Constitution, maybe, you know, it says specifically that evidence must be shown. It's actually, you know, it's like their obligation.
A maxim of law, actually, it says, he who maketh the claim beareth the burden of proof, right? So the one that makes the claim has to provide the evidence of the claim, right? So if somebody say, well, you have to do this, well, where's the evidence of that? I'm happy to accept it if you provide the evidence of these things and use initial evidence. Where's the evidence? So the one that commits the action against you has to have the evidence, not the other way around, because otherwise you'd be guilty until proven innocent. Now they do that. I know the ATO is terrible for it. They will say, no, you're getting an administrative penalty for failing to do whatever it is they make up. And they just make it up. The ATO is disgusting. They do not care about human life. They do not care about your wealth, your family at all. They claim to, but they don't. I know that because I've done work for, you know, a lot of people where I've had to deal with the ATO directly. They don't care. I know the people that work on the other that you speak to on the phone. Some of them are decent people, because I've had people on there that they just go silent, and I know that they know that what I'm saying is right. But they commit actions against people. They'll give people administrative penalties for different reasons, and you will ask them, well, can you provide evidence of these things? And they'll say, no, we're not going to provide evidence of anything relating to our application of the tax law. And I'll say, well, but you're committing the actions against us. So you have the burden of you have the burden of providing that proof. Are you saying that we're guilty until proven innocent? And they go silent. They just say, oh, we're not saying anything, because they're so corrupt that there's nothing they can say. It's very easy to evidence. Like, I don't mind bringing up the ATO because it's fun sometimes. If they're giving someone a hard time, I'm going to bring them up. We're going to have a chat. We're going to record it. Because you just ring them up and you just ask them these questions and they can't answer, and they incriminate themselves and they expose themselves. So they would like us to be guilty until proven innocent. In that video with the DHHS officer, he actually says, I'm happy for you to argue that in court. If that was the case, then I would be guilty until proven innocent. You know, we're asking them for the evidence. You provide the evidence. No, you can argue this in court. I have power. You argue it in court. We're going to go and do what we're going to do. No, your actions are against me, so you have to provide the evidence of that. I know I go on a bit, but I think it helps people to remember. I say it several different ways.
Yeah, absolutely. It's I know that a lot of people tuning in are new to this. I know some are doing a lot of trying different things in the courts themselves. One of the guys over here had a win this morning. I read in the comment section where they gave in regarding I think it was a parking fine or a traffic fine. So yeah, it's really good, man. We appreciate you kind of sharing that knowledge. And, you know, you mentioned the Milgram experiment, and the flip side of that humans, you know, blindly follow authority to a scary degree, is that when humans see someone standing up to authority, they are very quick to follow that. They just need to be shown that it is possible to stand up, and it's people like you that are standing up and showing the rest of us. So we do thank you for that, Nick. I might just ask before we get to the questions, very quickly, the end result, you know, they threatened to say, well, we're just going to send you, we're going to send you letters in the mail, because ultimately they couldn't get your consent. And you said, well, I'll just send that straight back, which I thought was quite funny. And they said, well, we'll just send it back again, or we'll just keep coming back. And then you called them for, you know, basically harassment. How did it all play out, and where is it at now? And did they end up mailing?
I did get sent a fine, and I didn't end up sending it back because I want to use some different, because if I send it back, a lot of them it'll go away. They won't, but some will keep sending it back to you. So that, but it's very easy to validate the fine. You just basically you can just use any of the higher law jurisdictional arguments. So I believe your misunderstanding of the law, your application of the law is deficient because of these reasons, and you can just write them down in the letter. But I'm happy if you can provide any evidence to a conditional acceptance that, you know, if you provide any evidence that these laws no longer are valid, and that your directives from the UN are the governing authority now, then I'm happy to pay you. Please provide the evidence, right? And then you send it out. You probably won't, if you do the letter in such a way that, you know, they can't create a controversy out of it, and you do it well, they won't send you anything back. If they do, but they send something back but don't provide any of the evidence that you asked for, you just send them a default notice and say, once again, you still haven't provided the evidence. The evidence that the notice that you've provided is not sufficient to validate your claim. I'm going to award you a second opportunity to provide the evidence. So you do that. But if you do the letter really well in the first place, probably won't even have to do that. I think it's a bit of fun. I like to play because if you know that you're in honour and what you're doing is true, if they do the wrong thing, you can take them to task on it. Let's go to court then. Let's go to court, or I'm going to write to the commissioner and ask them why are you following directives from the UN that are in breach of your own oath. There's mechanisms in place.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And, you know, it can sound like there's quite a bit to it, which there is, and you're sharing a lot, and some people are probably thinking, wow, this is quite a bit to take in. People are asking what to go and read. So I would say, and I'm not sure if you've got anything else to add to, you know, shared resources, but Solutions Empowerment has specific links to do with this type of stuff, specific tabs on fines, parking. They were the guys, they were the group that released the process to do with vaccine mandates, with the My Will and a few different things that can be sent off there. And I've just heard that they are looking at doing one with the 5G wireless radiation situation, which is great. So this is their website here, Solutions Empowerment. Please go on, check them out. Private membership group where you can dive into a lot of the stuff that Nick is talking about. And just while we're here, this is the Empower Movement website here. This is designed to keep you out of the court system and functions on merchant law. Please go and check this out specifically. I've been more involved with this group, and the positivity around it is something really quite special. And I see a lot of people quite stressed and fearful at the current situation, and I just hope that people go and understand the significance of the Empower Notice of Liability and the jurisdiction.
Can I just say one thing? With fear is the driving force and mechanism that makes all the bad things happen. That's why they tell us all the time. That's why they get us to read things like the book 1984 in high school. I read that in high school. It's because it fills our mind with fear. And if we've got collectively, those that have dominion have the fear of this specific thing happening, the fear actually invokes it to happen. The same way faith, we had a collective of people having faith for something to happen, that will happen because we have dominion. And that's why they use fear. That's the actual reason. That's in scripture. It teaches us that, and that's why all through the Bible says, "Do not fear, fear not. Greater is He that is in me than he that is in the world." So that's really important that we don't fear, because fear is giving worship to the enemy.
Yeah, well said. Very well said. Are there any other resources that you'd suggest before we knock off a couple of these questions?
Oh, look, Solutions Empowerment and Empower Movement, amazing. I mean, the Know Your Rights is great. Their stuff's awesome too. And they're really good guys. I'm involved with Solutions Empowerment and Empower Movement. That's what I'm involved with. But I don't hold any bias. I mean, Solutions Empowerment and Know Your Rights are they're both about specifically Australian. I think Solutions Empowerment is going to branch out to other nations as well. The Empower Movement is very specific in their approach. They have these documents that are just on another level, I think that's really special. That Empower Movement, and they're like Cal, the guy that sort of started that. He's got amazing knowledge of the Bible too. So it's based on the same principles that I know to be true, and I can be my witness that it is. And I'm not a church guy at all. I read the Bible a lot. I think if more people did read it, they would see how much truth is in there, and the solutions to our problems are there. So, but yeah, that's really all that I do. I read the Bible, and I look at. You can read certain case laws, but if you get on those websites, you if you don't know your rights or Solutions Empowerment, I know Solutions Empowerment's got heaps of different case law to read. It's got the webinars that you can watch, and you can learn step by step how to do things.
Yeah,
how the processes work.
Yeah, there's a lot there, and it's about 10 Aussie dollars a month.
Yeah,
which isn't a lot at all, and there's a lot there, and they keep adding things to it as well. So it's only growing, and like-minded people, sharing their sharing their stories around those processes and learning. It's quite a priceless thing. So if it's okay, we might just ask a couple of questions, Nick, before we round up. So someone's asked here about how two witnesses create truth. Does the phone count as a witness?
It depends on. It depends. Depends on that's a hard question. What would be the situation?
I guess if you're trying to implement kind of the tactic you were talking about, where you're asking the question and getting them to weigh in an answer to establish that as truth, is it the same as if you were having that conversation over the phone as opposed to you were face to face?
Yeah. Especially if you record the call, you can take it as evidence. As long as the people on, as long as you both establish who you are on the phone, you can evidence that. Yeah, like if you ring, say it's the ATO, they will say their name, who they are, or you can ask them, am I speaking with, Jonathan Stevenson or James Kelly, who, and so you've still got two people making a claim or rebutting a claim.
Yeah. Okay, and another question, it says, did the sign that you had installed on the gym outside set the legal precedence? Was it a generic sign using a law enforced by the High Court, or did you organise it as a customised item?
It was one that I've got a whole bunch of different ones that people have made, because you get friends that send you this one. I made this one. Here's another one. This one I use on my rural property. So it was just, I've got a whole bunch of them in my computer. So I just printed one out when this all started to happen. I didn't have one on my property before. It was when the COVID rules came in. That's when I decided I'm going to put one of these signs up on my fence. As long as it's got the case law precedents from the from the High Court of Australia, and it clearly, you state that it's invitation. Basically, anyone that comes in, they need to come in via. They need an invitation only. It's private property. It's a notice. You're going to put a few things on there for their notice, and who it applies to. So if it applies to, sheriff, applies to police, you've got to put those things in there, and then you put the High Court. But even if you didn't put everything in there, as long as you've got those High Court cases and it's a no trespassing notice, and you put in a little, a paragraph stating, what the notice is about, you've got a notice. That's all you need. If they don't read it properly, and they trespass, it's their issue, And the better the notice is, basically the more evidence you have against them. So if you might have one High Court case and it might set a certain precedent. You might have 6. I've got 6 on mine that set slightly different precedents, and they're different scenarios. One of them's that the Queen herself can't trespass on your property. Even if the Queen herself wanted to trespass, she wouldn't be able to. So yeah, there's different. And I don't read case law all the time. I'm not really interested. I probably will at one point. I'll probably get into it. I've got some court cases that I'm going to I've got a couple of different entities I'm going to take to court soon. So I'll be reading up on those local cases. All that, I reckon.
Yeah, and I will say that Solutions Empowerment actually have a trespassing template that was shared with their members. So once again, it's just more reason to go to these groups and get involved there and make the most of the information that's within those private membership platforms. So the lady that I was mentioning that actually was arrested here during the exercising my rights effort in recent weeks has said that, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how things turn out for her when and if I get the summons. Any tips? I got arrested for not providing my details to police quick enough. The arresting officer stated under the Health Act.
Well, how you just got to ask, send them a letter. Send a letter to the commissioner, the police commissioner, and just ask, ask them. There's actually a few articles. I think it's the international law article. So it's actually at the UN level. In their own law says that they can't at a state level impose fines. So there's things there that you can use. Maybe I can write up a notice and send it to you, and a copy of it, and you can have a look and share it with whoever wants to have a look. That might be easier. But yeah, if you get is that about a fine, or is it?
So that was well, she was arrested at the exercising my rights, yeah, and so they just arrested her, saying it's under the Health Act, and I know that she, wasn't able to articulate some of the things that maybe should be said at that point in time that you've mentioned. So she's just saying when and if she gets the summons, what would be the tips there. So her response would be to reply with a letter within.
Yeah. Because I don't know what state is she in? There's a different state legislation.
Western Australia.
Yeah, so it'd be a bit different there, but it wouldn't be. It'd be the same, but it would have their own act, and they'd be slightly different. So it's just a matter of finding what you need. There's so much in there. Best way would be to get on that Solutions Empowerment and ask in the forum. There's like a forum there, and ask some questions, because there'll be some people from Western Australia that are on there. That might already have all those answers, and they can probably just send you private message you with all the information. Yeah. But basically, you've just got to. I would send a letter to the commissioner and just ask them. You could state the claim too that you're that you don't believe that you have to give your name for X, Y, Z reasons, and that the jurisdiction they're operating under is not valid. To supersede, international law. And there's provisions for that are available that you can use and put them into a document. You send that type of a letter and just say, I think that I was, and send them an invoice with it for you. I think, I know in Victoria, if you're arrested against your will, so no, if you're falsely arrested, I think it's $10,000 an hour. It's a lot of money that they owe you. So, you know, if she was arrested for I don't know how long she was arrested for. If it was for 10 minutes, you could, you know, say, I want $5,000. Your mistake because you're operating outside of your public capacity, but you're operating, the police are operating in their private capacity. So there's lots of different things you can do. Every situation is different. So I don't want to like give advice on something because I don't want to give you the wrong advice and I don't know all the variables.
Yeah, that's fair enough. But definitely enough to work with the context provided from this conversation, and then moving forth and connecting. I think it's a really important part is to eventually connect with these groups and go deeper for those that are interested in being able to stand in their power like you did, Nick. So last question here. They've mentioned, Nick has spoken a lot about reading the Bible. Is there a specific Bible we should be looking at getting? Is the King James Bible okay? Should it be the original Bible from 1611?
Yeah, I some of the newer translations are terrible. Like the NIV, I think it's the NIV version. It's terrible. There's Bible verses in there where it says it's okay to rape a woman. And it's not what it says in the Bible, the original. I read it in the Hebrew as well because I can read the Hebrew, so I read it in the Hebrew and I can check a lot of this stuff as well. And I think the reason that these bad translations have come out is to create a controversy or a case against the Bible, so that these groups can get up and bang at the Bible and teach people, look, the Bible says that it's okay to rape, or it's okay to do this, when it doesn't say anything like that. But the translation does say that. If you've got a new NIV. I read the King James. I just read the New King James. But I've been reading King James for years, so I just know what's in there, and I know where some of the problems are. There's a few mistranslations in there. There's lots of good Bibles. You've just got to do a little bit of research. But if you're going to start with something, just start with the King James Bible. I'd start with the King James, just New King James. I think that's the easiest way to start. Get your head around it, and then do some research and ask some questions about which Bibles are the most accurate. There's plenty of places online where you can send emails and just ask their thoughts are, and ask lots of people and do a bit of research.
Yeah, cool. So I think that might just about wrap it up, Nick. I know it's getting late over on the East Coast where you are, and we appreciate you giving your time and coming on and sharing your experiences and knowledge. I think, we're hearing a lot about the information that you've shared, and it's probably not entirely anything new to some of the people tuning in, but to see it implemented in real time and to be effective where they didn't just simply cuff you and take you or, enter your premises. I think that is adds real integrity to what you've shared tonight, because you were actually able to walk the walk and show that there is something going on there. And even if people don't entirely get their head around the depths of it, because it's really only the surface when we want to go deep into what's actually happening with jurisdiction and stuff. But it should be enough for people to see and say, yeah, that doesn't make any sense, because they came there, they said that they've got these powers. We all assume they have these powers because that's why we're obeying, these laws and these lockdown things and everything else. But yet when they were questioned, they dodged answers and eventually left. So what's going on there? And I really hope that sparks, some questions in people's minds, and they start to just think critically about what's going on and be open to this type of information. Because on the other side of this knowledge lies you know, a really beautiful planet with morals and ethics and compassion and all those things that we the people do want. But we've kind of been led down a different path where we find ourselves now.
I agree with you 100%. Hopefully, we can, we can, if the battlefield's, the victory is his. So if we can stand in honor and be willing to do everything, I was willing to get arrested on that day. I just said, no, I know you're wrong. I'm going to dig my feet in to the ground, the Highland way, and I'm not just going to stand and fight until someone prevails. And it ended up working for me, and it could have gone the other way, but we have to be willing to sometimes not win the first battle. We want to win the war, right? And it's a big war, and we need to see it like that. And we're all soldiers on one side or the other. There's no middle ground. Okay, you're for truth, you're not. Okay, turn the light off. What happens? Immediately, darkness fills it. Turn the light on, all the darkness goes. So you've got to stand in one or the other. You don't want to be lukewarm. And if we can be willing to be persecuted for it, I got a lot of hate for those videos as well. And then and then I got arrested at that protest. And I had a lot of people calling me names, all the rest of it. But you know what? We need to be willing to sacrifice not just some of our time, not just some of our maybe our wealth, but literally be willing to sacrifice everything for the truth's sake. If we're willing to do that, I know that we get help from there, and we're upheld, and we're able to have the victory. But if we're not willing to sacrifice everything, a lot of people won't sacrifice, their status and standing amongst their friends and family. They don't want people to think badly of them. They might say, I agree with you, Nick, but I'm worried about what other people might think. But that's a really big one. That's one of the main mechanisms they're using with COVID. It's COVID rubbish. People are scared of what people think. I better follow because I'm not following the COVID restrictions. People will think I'm a bad man or woman. So we need to be willing to. If we're not willing to have any discomfort, then we're not willing to sacrifice anything. And there's a maxim of equity. It's taught in Scripture anyway. But in order to receive equity, something like in order to receive equity, you need to be willing to sacrifice. It's something to that effect. I can't remember what it is, but you don't. With the equity maxims or any of these maxims, you don't actually need to know how to quote them word for word. You just need to be able to point out what the message is of the maxim. So if we're not willing to sacrifice, more than just a little bit of time, we're not going to have the victory. And you see, there's many cases in high court cases where you see like one man or one woman that goes all the way and then has the victory because they're willing to not quit, give up, because it gets too hard. Anyway, so I'm just appealing to people's integrity, and I hope that we become that kind of a people.
Yeah, and I hope that people hear the message. I know that a lot of people tuning in are from the Choosing Freedom private group that we've got here in Perth. That was formed after, a year or so of hard slogging with the 5G issue, and realizing, well, many of us realized from the beginning, but to let people experience that the system is not what we think it is, and that all these conventional paths of actions are designed to kind of bleed us dry a lot of the times, endless petitions and those things. So we formed this group. It's about non-conventional paths of action. And I just think that we're so blessed. I don't want to use the activist label, but for the sake, without having a better word there, to be an activist or someone that cares at this time, I think is a real blessing, because years gone by, we didn't know a great deal about merchant law or these other elements that are really empowering us now. So I just encourage anyone, if you're not already connected with the Choosing Freedom group, and this kind of resonates with you, then come across and connect with us. We'll be working closely together with the Empower NOL. Once it's released, we're going to have some group things going there so that we can send those off, especially round one, get them signed off and sent off together, and really just support each other through that process so that we can start to grow that spine and feel that confidence and stand in that power, like you've kind of inspired us all to do, Nick.
No worries. Well, thanks for the time, and thanks for giving me a platform to share my my story, and we'll keep working together for the good of man and woman. And
You've got a webinar coming up.
Oh yes, I am doing one with Darren. We're going to do it we're going to put it on solutions empowerment.
Oh, okay.
It's a plan. It's a plan. It's not a. We're going to action it though. Still.
Yeah. Cool. I'm excited to see when that does get released on there.
No worries.
Yeah, thank you very much, and thanks for everyone that tuned in, and then a big thank you from me to everyone that has taken the time tonight to hear your story and learn about this, and hopefully we can put it into action bit by bit and work towards that future that Nick and others are helping to forge with
Thanks
it.
a lot. Thanks a lot, brother.
Cool.
All
I'll
right.
speak to you again soon.
See ya. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.